This isn't just another story about a kid who fought back. This is about the invisible burdens some of us carry, the weight of judgment, and the quiet strength it takes to keep standing even when the world tries to push you down. Especially when the world tries to push us down. Today we're diving into the story of Marcus Thorne, a young man who moved to a new town with old scars and found out that sometimes the hardest fight isn't with your fists, but with who people expect you to be. Stay tuned, because this one's going to hit different. The bus hummed a low, steady drone that usually lulled most passengers into a doze. But Marcus Thorne was wide awake, his gaze fixed on the shifting landscape outside. Crowded city blocks blurred into sprawling suburban neighborhoods, each house a near-perfect replica of the last. It wasn't his first time being the new kid, not by a long shot. But this move to Sterling Creek, Oregon, felt different. His mom had landed a dream job, a chance to finally plant roots, and his Uncle Malachi had urged him to see it as a clean slate. "A fresh start, Marcus," he'd said, his voice a comforting gravel. But Marcus knew better. Fresh starts didn't really exist when you looked like him in a town like this. Not when you carried the invisible baggage of every other fresh start that had soured. The moment Marcus stepped onto the sprawling, meticulously manicured campus of Westwood High, he felt it. The subtle pause in conversations, the way heads swiveled, then snapped back, as if they hadn't been staring at all. He could almost hear the silent assessments, the mental checkboxes being ticked. Even the teachers with their polite, almost overly solicitous smiles and voices, just a touch too careful, radiated an unspoken tension. He'd seen this movie before, countless times. He didn't react. He'd learned long ago that a calm exterior was his best defense. The first few periods drifted by without incident. He took his seat answered when called on, kept his focus glued to the work. But by lunch, the feeling of being watched had settled in a persistent, irritating itch beneath his skin. Tray in hand, Marcus scanned the chaotic cafeteria for a place to sit. Most tables were already a tapestry of tight-knit groups' conversations woven so densely they didn't include him. A few students exchanged quick telling glances, whispering behind cupped hands. Then he spotted it, a lone empty seat, near a guy completely absorbed in his phone, seemingly oblivious to the world. Not ideal, but it would do. Marcus had barely set his tray down when a voice dripping with casual arrogance sliced through the cafeteria din. "Lost new guy." Marcus turned slowly. A blonde kid with an easy smirk and an almost alarming amount of confidence leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on Marcus. A couple of others at his table watched with unconcealed amusement. This was Chadwick Albright. Even before his name was known, his presence screamed untouchable. His dad, Marcus, would soon learn practically owned half the real estate in Sterling Creek, and Chadwick's crew followed him like he was some kind of suburban royalty. Quarterback, student body president, golden boy. The kind of guy who got away with anything. And for whatever reason, Chadwick had decided that Marcus being at Westwood was indeed a problem. Marcus exhaled slowly, a practiced, almost imperceptible release of tension. "Didn't know I needed a map," he replied, his voice even. Chadwick chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Just making sure. Not a lot of new faces around here. Especially your kind." Marcus caught the split-second hesitation, the unspoken prejudice hanging in the air. He met Chadwick's stare, his expression unreadable. "Guess I'm the exception." The smirk widened, but there was something else behind it now. Amusement, interest, maybe even a flicker of challenge. "Welcome to Westwood, man." Marcus didn't say anything, just sat down and picked up his fork. The message was clear. This was just the beginning. The low hum of the bus had been a warning. The silence of this town was an invitation to a different kind of battle, one Marcus had fought many times before. And the first bell for round one had just rung. What started as a few judgmental glances and whispers soon began to morph into something far more insidious. At first it was subtle, almost deniable. Side comments in the hallways whispered just loud enough for Marcus to catch, "Didn't know they let them in here. Wonder how long he'll last." Nothing he hadn't heard before, a familiar grating background noise to his life. Marcus ignored it. He wasn't at Westwood to entertain their ignorance, or to validate their preconceived notions. He was there to get his education, to make his mother proud, to simply exist without being a target. But Chadwick Albright wasn't the type to let things go unnoticed. Chadwick had the kind of confidence that only came from knowing deep in your bones that no one would ever truly check you. His father, as Marcus quickly gathered from the whispers and the sheer number of Albright & Sons real estate signs dotting Sterling Creek, owned half the town. His crew, a rotating cast of obedient satellites like Mitch and Kyle, followed him like he was some kind of minor deity. Quarterback, student body president, golden boy. The kind of guy who could charm his way out of anything and twist any narrative to his favor. And for whatever reason, maybe a perceived threat to his established pecking order, maybe just a casual bigotry, Chadwick had decided that Marcus Thorne being at Westwood was unequivocally a problem. The first real test of Marcus's resolve came at his locker. He was swapping out textbooks, the metallic clatter echoing softly in the near-empty hall, when a sharp, deliberate bump knocked him forward. His shoulder slammed against the cold metal, a dull thud that seemed to reverberate down his spine. "Oops," Chadwick drawled, his voice a perfect imitation of fake innocence. "Didn't see you there, new guy." Marcus didn't react. He finished grabbing his notebook, his movements slow, precise, controlled. If he gave them nothing, if he showed no crack in his facade, they'd get bored. That was the theory anyway. Chadwick scoffed a short, derisive sound. "You're quiet, huh? That's cool. Real cool." Marcus turned, meeting Chadwick's gaze. Not angry, not scared, just looking. For a fleeting second, Chadwick's practiced smirk flickered a tiny chip in his confident armor. Then Mitch, or maybe Kyle, they all blended together in their sycophantic uniformity, muttered something in Chadwick's ear, and the smirk snapped back into place. "Catch you later, new guy." Marcus watched them walk away, their laughter echoing. The hallway noise returned, but the chill of their presence lingered. That was the first time. The second time was in the cafeteria. Marcus was heading toward the overflowing trash cans his tray balanced when a foot shot out. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't meant to be. His body jolted forward, a sudden lurch. But years of training, years of quick reflexes allowed him to catch himself before he could fall. He steadied himself, his grip firm. Laughter erupted behind him. Chadwick held up his hands, a performance for the cafeteria crowd. "Relax, man. It was a joke." Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't even look back. He just stepped over Chadwick's extended foot and kept walking. More laughter, then a mumbled, "Too easy." Marcus's jaw clenched, a familiar muscle memory. A lion doesn't flinch when the hyenas bark. His Uncle Malachi's voice, a steady anchor in his mind, echoed the words. He exhaled, forcing the tension from his shoulders, willing himself to let it go. But letting it go wasn't enough for them. Because the third time, Chadwick made sure it wasn't just a joke. He wanted more. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to break that quiet control, to see the lion flinch. And Marcus, despite every fiber of his being, screaming to walk away, to keep his hands in his pockets, to not give them what they craved, knew with a chilling certainty that the silent torment was about to erupt into something far more brutal. And that's when things changed. It was after school, the kind of quiet afternoon where the hallways already felt hollow and vast. Marcus had just finished up in the library, lingering over a particularly dense history text. Most of the students were long gone, the parking lot half empty, a testament to the urgency of Friday afternoons. He wasn't in a rush. His mom wouldn't be home from work for a few hours, and he didn't mind taking his time. As he stepped outside the cool Oregon air, a welcome contrast to the stale library quiet, he heard voices. Too familiar. "Hey, new guy!" Marcus barely had time to react before something smacked against his back. Hard. He staggered forward, the unexpected force nearly knocking him off his feet. But years of practiced balance kept him upright. He caught himself before he hit the pavement. Laughter. He turned slowly, deliberately. Chadwick stood there, flanked by Mitch and Kyle and a couple of other guys whose names didn't matter. their faces contorted in amused sneers. Chadwick was still holding his drink cup, the last few drops of dark soda dripping from his fingers, splattering onto the asphalt. "Damn, my bad," Chadwick said, not even trying to sound sorry. His eyes sparkled with malicious glee. "Didn't see you there." Marcus glanced down. His favorite hoodie, the one his Uncle Malachi had given him, was plastered with soda ice cubes scattered at his feet like discarded ambitions. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Other students lingering in the lot, drawn by the sudden commotion, had stopped to watch. Marcus inhaled through his nose, a slow, steadying breath. This wasn't about a spilled drink. It was about power. It was about humiliation. Chadwick's smirk widened. "Come on, man. Say something." Marcus didn't. He just started to walk past him. That's when Chadwick shoved him. It wasn't playful. It wasn't just a joke. It was forceful, a calculated push meant to provoke, to shatter that carefully constructed composure. Marcus stumbled back a step, his breath calm, his fingers flexing almost imperceptibly at his sides. Chadwick laughed a high, triumphant sound. "What, you scared?" Mitch stepped forward, grinning. "Nah, man, he's just soft." Marcus had spent his whole life hearing those words, "walk away." He could almost hear his Uncle Malachi's voice, firm but loving. "Keep your hands in your pockets. Don't give them what they want." But right now, Chadwick wasn't looking for an easy laugh. He wasn't just playing around. He wanted a reaction. He wanted to prove something. He wanted Marcus to break. Marcus took one last deep breath. Then, with a quiet, deliberate movement, he set down his backpack. The simple action seemed to suck the air out of the parking lot. Chadwick raised an eyebrow, his smirk faltering for a split second. "Oh, you got something to say now?" Marcus didn't answer. He just rolled his shoulders back, a subtle shift of weight. Chadwick chuckled a nervous, uncertain sound. "Man, you..." That was as far as he got. Marcus moved. One step, quick, clean. A left feint just enough to make Chadwick flinch his head, snapping to the side. Then a sharp, piston-like right hook straight to his ribs. The sound was sickening, a dull thud followed by a choked gasp. Chadwick's body folded in on itself, his eyes wide with shock and pain. But Marcus wasn't done. A fluid pivot, an uppercut perfect form. Chadwick's head snapped back a visible jolt, and before he could even think about staying on his feet, his legs gave out. He hit the pavement hard, a jarring crack that echoed through the sudden stunned silence. Mitch and the others stared mouths agape, their bravado evaporating like morning mist. Marcus stepped back, adjusting his hoodie, his breath steady, controlled. Chadwick groaned, rolling onto his side, clutching his ribs. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low, clear, cutting through the silence. "You done, Chadwick?" Chadwick didn't answer. He just coughed a ragged, painful sound. Marcus looked at the others, his gaze sweeping across their pale, frightened faces. "Anyone else?" No one moved. No one dared. Marcus grabbed his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and walked away without another word. The remaining students parted for him like the Red Sea, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and a dawning understanding. What happened in that parking lot wasn't over. In fact, it was just the beginning. The ripples of that moment would spread far beyond the asphalt, touching every corner of Westwood High, and altering Marcus's world in ways he couldn't yet imagine. By the next morning, the entire school knew. Marcus didn't have to check his phone or listen to the whispered rumors. The way people looked at him said everything. The stares weren't just curiosity anymore. They were different. Some were impressed, a glint of awe in their eyes. Some were nervous, shifting uncomfortably when he passed. A few looked at him like they were seeing him for the very first time, as if a veil had been lifted. Chadwick wasn't in school. That part didn't surprise Marcus. Taking a hit like that in front of half the parking lot wasn't something you bounced back from overnight physically or ego-wise. Mitch and Kyle Chadwick's ever-present shadows, they kept their distance, their usual swagger replaced by a cautious wide berth. Marcus walked into class like nothing had happened, sat down, pulled out his notebook. Business as usual. But that didn't mean people were done talking. At lunch, as he moved through the cafeteria, conversations quieted when he passed. People whispered. A few nodded, as if they suddenly respected him. Some freshman kids who hadn't even spoken to him before looked at him like he was some kind of legend. "Damn, didn't know the new guy had hands," someone muttered as he walked by. "Chadwick had it coming," another voice added. "Heard he's not coming back for a week." Marcus ignored it all. He wasn't here to be a hero. He wasn't looking for validation. He just wanted to eat his sandwich in peace, to disappear back into the quiet strength he preferred. Then, as he sat down at an empty table, he heard something else. "He's just another violent thug." The words were soft, barely a murmur, but not soft enough. Marcus turned his head slightly. A couple of girls at a nearby table, one of them a brunette with expensive-looking jewelry, and an expression like she smelled something foul, looked away sharply when she realized he'd heard her. His stomach clenched. That was the thing about moments like these. No matter how justified you were, no matter how right the situation felt, someone always found a way to twist it. A defense, a moment of self-preservation easily warped into a stereotype. He didn't regret it. Chadwick had gone looking for a fight, and Marcus just made sure he got one. Still, the weight of it all sat on him. He had spent years training, years controlling himself, years walking away. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. So why did it feel like no matter what choice he made, people had already decided who he was? It was a frustrating, soul-crushing paradox. But Marcus was about to learn that real strength wasn't just about throwing a punch or even holding one back. It was about what came next. It was about navigating the complex, often unfair tapestry of perception. And just when the weight of this new unwelcome reality threatened to crush him, a new voice, surprisingly calm and perceptive, was about to cut through the noise, offering not a judgment, but a different kind of challenge. The rest of the week passed in a blur. Chadwick still hadn't shown up, presumably recovering. His friends Mitch and Kyle didn't bother Marcus anymore, their swagger replaced by a wide, cautious berth. The stares faded a little. The whispers got quieter, but something still hung in the air around Marcus, a palpable tension. He could feel it, a new kind of pressure. One afternoon as he left the gym, the scent of sweat and liniment thick in the air, a voice cut through the fading echoes of bouncing basketballs. "Got a minute, Marcus?" He hesitated. He wasn't in the mood for a lecture, not from anyone, but something in Coach Elena Rodriguez's tone made him stop. She was the wrestling coach known for her no-nonsense approach and an uncanny ability to see beyond the surface. They walked outside, standing near the track where the football team was finishing practice, their distant shouts a rhythmic backdrop. "I heard what happened." Coach Rodriguez said, her gaze steady, unblinking. "Figured you had your reasons." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. He wasn't about to apologize. Coach Rodriguez studied him, a slight tilt of her head. "You a fighter, Marcus?" He shrugged. "Been boxing since I was a kid." Coach let out a low whistle. "Yeah, that much was obvious. You're good. But let me ask you something. Did that fight change anything?" Marcus looked at her, unsure where this was going. Coach Rodriguez crossed her arms, a powerful athletic stance. "You think Chadwick learned something?" "Think the rest of them did." Marcus exhaled, running a hand over his head. He knew the answer, a bitter truth he'd learned many times over. Chadwick wasn't the type to reflect, not in a way that stuck. And as for the others, some respected him now, some feared him, and some would always see him the way they wanted to, no matter what he did. They had their narrative, and he was just a character in it. Coach Rodriguez nodded, as if she could see the thoughts running through his head. "Thing is, people like Chadwick, they don't really lose. Not in a way that sticks. He'll come back, he'll run his mouth, and the cycle starts again. But you, Marcus, you're different. You have control." Marcus frowned. "What are you saying?" Coach tilted her head toward the field, towards the disciplined movements of the wrestling team. "I've been telling the boxing coach to send me a few kids for wrestling. You ever thought about putting all that skill to better use?" Marcus blinked. "Wrestling?" Coach Rodriguez grinned, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Look, I know you can handle yourself. That much is obvious. But there's a difference between winning a fight and learning how to own your power. I've seen too many kids like you get boxed into a reputation they never wanted. You already proved you're not to be messed with. Now prove there's more to you than that. Marcus didn't answer right away. For so long, fighting had been about survival, about standing his ground against those who sought to push him down. It was about raw instinct and self-preservation. But the way Coach Rodriguez was looking at him, the way she spoke, it wasn't about proving something to them. It was about being more. That night, Marcus sat on his bed, staring at his Uncle Malachi's old boxing gloves. He thought about all the times he had held back, all the times he had walked away. And the one time he hadn't. Coach Rodriguez was right. Chadwick wouldn't change. People would think what they wanted. But Marcus still had a choice. And maybe, just maybe this time, he'd make a different one. Because real strength wasn't just about knowing when to fight or how to fight. It was about knowing what to fight for. It was about building, creating, and redefining what it means to be powerful, not just for himself, but for the countless others who had also faced the unseen burden. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt the weight of being misunderstood, or had to stand your ground, hit that subscribe button. Life's full of choices, and sometimes the hardest one is deciding who you want to be. Let's talk about it in the comments below. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to redefine your strength? How did you handle it? Let's keep the conversation going.